All right, guys, we got the Dragon Ball Z sweatshirt back today. The OG, obviously, probably my favorite sweatshirt. So yes, you've probably seen me wear this in a few other videos. Don't hate. We got the first Legends of Runeterra video that I've done in a little while. I'm kind of excited about it. I'm going to start ramping up some more Legends of Runeterra content because I'm really hoping that Riot decides that they're going to make an announcement around Christmas, around the new year, that, hey, the open beta is going to start way earlier than you guys expected. One can only hope. So with that said, this video is going to be the top 5 most talked about cards in Legends of Runeterra right now, pre-open beta release. Is that right? Yes, pre-open beta release. So this is basically cards that people have been, do they need nerfs? Are they too strong? Are they, what decks are they in? You'll see that some of these cards are actually in a few different decks. And I just want to take a second to kind of evaluate these cards and tell you guys what I think about their use, whether or not they should be nerfed, and kind of the overall deck archetypes that they're in. So, if you're looking to curb that Legends of Runeterra content desire, look no further. That is coming up right now. So, I'm going to start using Mobalytics. They're actually a great platform for just a card database and stuff like that. I was using this site called Ranked Boost, but the entire UI and stuff in Mobalytics is great. So that's what we're going with for this video. So we are going to start with She Who Wanders. So, yes, I'm sure this is no surprise to pretty much everybody watching this, so we're going to start out with the most obvious one. She Who Wanders is used in a very good deck archetype that's pretty well publicized by now. It's essentially a Freljord Frost Control deck. It uses Anivia, it uses Tryndamere, it uses She Who Wanders, and as you can see, it also uses War Mother's Call. The idea with this deck is to essentially control and stall out the game until you get to the late game, save up some extra spell mana, and you can play right here this 12 cost War Mother's Call. And as you can see here, it's a slow spell, summon the top unit from our deck now and each start of the round. So immediately, basically, the lowest possible unit you're going to get is Avarosian Hearthguard. And Avarosian Hearthguard's effect is when he's summoned, so it can be from your deck, it can be from wherever, it doesn't have to be played from your hand. Grant all their allies in the deck +1/+1. So it just keeps chaining, snowballing off each other. You're probably going to want to hit a She Who Wanders. So She Who Wanders, as I bring that up, and for some reason, when I type it, it does not want to pull it up unless I put Wanders. So She Who Wanders right here, all followers with 4 or less power in play and in hands get obliterated, which means they're removed from play. So basically, she's also a field clear. Now that is a play effect. Does have to be from your hand, can't just be summoned from the deck. There's that button again, down below the video. If you like this video, click the like button. And then there's the other button, the sub button. If you like this video and other videos, or you think you're going to like other videos, or if you're going to play Legends of Runeterra, because I'm going to be on top of that like white on rice, click the sub button below for more content in the future. Oh, and don't forget to turn on that bell. With that said, she was recently nerfed, so I don't think she's going to be that talked about for much longer. So the nerf was essentially, she used to be 9 mana, and she used to also have regenerate, believe it or not, which is insane. I don't know who the hell thought to have her be regenerative with 10 health. It's probably almost impossible to kill her unless you have something like Vengeance. So she no longer has regenerate. She no longer costs 9 mana, she costs 10, and her effect does not affect champions. So something like a Teemo or an Ezreal on the field, this will not obliterate. If you're playing 3 Catalysts of Ions, the lowest turn you're going to get this out on is turn 7, assuming you draw all 3 Catalysts of Aeons. And by turn 7, if you're playing against an aggro deck, or maybe even a Shark Chariot deck with the Hecarim and Shadow Isles, which we'll go over a little bit later, they're probably going to be either almost about to kill you, or you're already going to be dead by turn 7. I think that something like a Raza, the Sunderer, which Raza, it's an okay replacement. It costs a lot less mana, but it's definitely not a She Who Wanders. Kill the 2 lowest power enemies if an ally died this round. It does also have Fearsome, which is nice, so if you do summon it with something like War Mother's Call, it's still going to be a really strong card, but it's just not the same as She Who Wanders, and it kind of strays from the original deck type strategy. I see this deck mainly becoming in like an Ionian deck as well, so Anivia and something like Karma to control the field the whole game, and then ultimately ending with a Dusk to Dawn, or Dusk and Dawn, to duplicate the Anivias and basically have that be your win condition of just, you know, a ton of Anivias on the board. And Anivia is another card that we'll get to in a little bit. All right, number 2. This is another one you guys probably saw coming. Deny. All right, listen. I'm gonna break it down for you real quick. I am sick of hearing about this card. It's like you make something that's reminiscent of Counterspell in freaking, you know, Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering mainly.
Well, then everyone loses their minds.
Oh my god, there's a Counterspell. It's broken. We need to ban it. We need to nerf it. No, this card is like borderline okay. A part of me really wants to say it's bad. I'm not gonna lie, but it's not bad. It's not a bad card. It's decent. Okay, it's okay. This card does not stop burst spells. Let me repeat that.
May I have your attention, please?
This card does not stop burst spells. I feel like I consistently see conversations on Reddit, on other places, other videos, trying to rationalize what, like, other things with this card. Like, well, you need a counter spell to keep the game in check so that you can counter large spells and it keeps people from overextending. It's not that complicated. There are 44 burst spells. I counted. There's 44 burst spells. There's 32 fast spells. And there's 32 slow spells. So right from the get, there's more burst spells. Now, no, I didn't count monster effects that this can stop. I don't know how to do that. There's no easy way to do that right now. I'm sure somebody will do it at some point. If you want to do it, put it in the description. More power to you. Thank you. This thing, right off the cut, has what? It's a 40.7% chance that if they play a card, you can't, or spell I should say, you can't even stop it with Deny. So that's almost a 1 in 2 shot that it's going to be a dead card in your hand. So now if you add all the skills it could possibly stop, you might be looking at, I'll give it, you know what? I'll even give it credit. Maybe 25% chance. So you have a 1 in 1 in 4 chance that this card will not stop whatever your opponent's playing. To me, that's a pretty high chance that it's not going to work. So at certain points in the game, it's going to be a dead draw. And I played a lot of games where I had this in my hand and I was like, yeah, I can't play this card. And honestly, like, I put up another video. It was a Vladimir and Braum deck, which I think is going to be one of the top competitive decks once everything, all the dust settles and all the cards get nerfed. That deck played mostly burst spells. So I wasn't even really ever worried about Deny with anything that I did. Now, something like War Mother's Call, yeah, you're screwed if you play that, because if you deny that, 12 mana, 3 mana, all right, that's a big swing in momentum. But otherwise, that's super situational. For anyone thinking this is going to be nerfed, it's not going to be nerfed. Drop it. End of discussion. It's not going to be nerfed. Just deal with it. All right, so number 3 is Fiora. I love the idea behind Fiora. I love that it's an alternate win condition. I think that card games need alternate win conditions to be successful, to be fun. So I love the whole idea behind Fiora. Don't get me wrong. However, I think that her win condition is a little bit too easy to get. I mean, there are some decks, like for instance that Frost Control deck that I just showed you, that make it incredibly easy to avoid it. There's really only 2 minions that'll ever get killed in that Frost Control deck by Fiora, so that is kind of an advantage for that deck. But beyond that, when you take a look at the deck, there's so many. This thing has so much field control. And when I say field control, I mean you have total control over who's blocking everybody that you attack with. You have total control over whether or not your followers or your champions take damage or their champions die or live. It just has so much control. It's very hard for the other deck to do anything about it. Even if you're playing 3 denies, which is probably really the only way that you would beat this deck. So in this case, this would be when deny is absolutely great. Unless you're playing 3 denies, 9 times out of 10, this Fiora deck's going to be able to do whatever it wants to get to its win condition. So for that reason, I think this kind of limits the deck types that you can play. And I don't think that's good overall for the metagame. So the question then becomes, how do you actually limit Fiora? Because if you, or how do you change Fiora so she's not as broken? It's hard. I understand they want to keep the lore of the whole League of Legends thing with the 4 and having the 4 enemies dying being the key to the actual win condition. So you can't change that, but you can change her attack or her cost. So I think that the first start might be switching her to a 4 cost. If that still doesn't quite do it because it doesn't really do much, which I have a feeling that switching it to 4 cost might not even do anything really other than just delay it for a turn. I think that she might even need to go to 5 cost and stay at 3/3, or go to 4 cost and maybe change to like a 2/3 or something like that. Maybe lose an attack so it's not as easy for her to actually kill an enemy. I don't know. All I know is I do think that she is needing to be nerfed. I do know that Riot specifically said in a news release, which I'm going to put up right here, that they are keeping an eye on Fiora. So we'll see what happens with her, but I do hope that she gets some sort of change. I do like the win condition. I think she needs to stay around. Just needs to be a little bit harder to actually win with her win condition. All right, number 4. This is the one card that I think absolutely everybody can universally agree needs to be nerfed. I'm going to go out on a limb and say not for the reason you might think it is. Maybe some people out there do, but I feel like most people just think that her effect itself is broken. So sure, Dusk and Dawn, great combo with her, totally OP and broken. Most of the Shadow Isles cards combined with Anivia, totally OP, broken, like great combo cards. But those are just combo enablers. I love all those cards as is. I don't think any of those cards need to be changed, including Dusk and Dawn. I think Dusk and Dawn is great, and Dusk and Dawn actually enables multiple other deck archetypes to be made and be competitive. The real issue with Anivia, and I'll probably make another video on this after they release the actual nerfs before the open beta, because I'm not sure if they'll do this before the open beta or not, is the fact that there is no graveyard. I think that is why Anivia and also Shark Chariot, which I'll get into in a little bit as well, why cards like that, why there's so much issues with them, and why they could potentially be very, very, very busted. If I have an effect and my creature on the field interacts with my own graveyard to get, bonus effects, my opponent can play something to remove that card from the graveyard. Yu-Gi-Oh! Had a lot of this with things like Return from the Different Dimension and stuff like that. A lot of like graveyard manipulation. I think that not only does this game not have graveyard manipulation, but it just needs a graveyard in the first place. And I think that would solve a lot of the problems with cards like Anivia. And Shark Chariot isn't necessarily a huge problem. They made these cards that literally revolve around the graveyard. I mean, they made Shadow Isles, which revolves around the graveyard, and yet there's no graveyard. So it's just like, huh? So, I mean, I understand them wanting to be different. I understand Hearthstone doesn't have a graveyard. I know they need real estate for the UI. They want to put other features in, all this other stuff. But I just think a graveyard is very good for this game. I just think it adds a whole other realm of strategy that I think this game can super, super benefit from. Because of this, I don't think Anivia can just be nerfed. I think it needs a whole rework. If they create a graveyard, and I supposedly they're supposed to release new cards with the actual release of the game as well. So there's either two things here. Either they fully rework Anivia and they still axe the graveyard, and maybe that's a feature 5 sets from now, I don't know. Or they actually put the graveyard into the game, make some cards that remove stuff from the graveyard, and et cetera, and then that'll solve the problem. The only other thing that they could do is just simply change how certain cards interact with her, where like Dusk and Dawn, as an example, maybe don't make duplicates of her. I don't know what they'd want to do. Maybe Dusk and Dawn doesn't interact with champions anymore, things like that. But then I think Dusk and Dawn becomes worse, and then it becomes this whole chain interaction or chain reaction of other cards not doing the things they were meant to do. So I think it's just going to end in either a full rework or we get a graveyard. And finally, number 5 is not necessarily Shark Chariot, not really any card in particular, but just Ephemeral as a whole. So if I go to the decks over here, I mean, there's actually 2 Ephemeral decks I have in here. One is kind of a burst OTK type deck. The other is just aggro spam with Ezreal, basically just, slinging spells at their face at the same time. I'm going to pull up the Ephemeral burst because it's actually my favorite version of it too. Essentially, again, you have the Dawn and Dusk in here, but you just spam the board with a bunch of Ephemeral units, and Shark Chariot just becomes this thing that is constantly coming back. And you have Hecarim obviously too, which when he attacks, he's summoning more units. So this whole Shadow Isles thing, I think it's talked about a lot, and I think that it's a common deck type because, again, there's no graveyard. I mean, you have these things interacting with the graveyard that are just like, they're just like God, like they can't be touched. Like, okay, Shark Chariot is gonna, let me make sure I get the wording right. When an ephemeral ally attacks, revive me attacking. So even that sounds vague, just the wording alone, revive me attacking. It just sounds weird. It should be like revive me from the graveyard as an attacking follower or something like that, but they specifically don't do that because they know they don't have a graveyard. graveyard. And then it's like, well, how do I prevent Shark Chariot from happening? Well, you don't. It just happens because it's basically invulnerable. Like, it has this third thing attached to it that's invulnerability while dead. And which I know it's kind of like an oxymoron, but that's essentially what it's doing. It's making itself invulnerable, and whether you like it or not, when you when you attack with an ephemeral ally, this thing's gonna come back, and it's just gonna happen every single turn. And for special consideration, it might not be the most talked about card right now, but it sure as hell is probably the most talked about person, thing, Yordle, whatever. Is it a Yordle? I don't even know. Teemo. My boy Teemo. Clearly, I cannot end this video without mentioning Teemo. Is he the most talked about? Not really. Is he the most tilting? Yup. Is he the most fun? Totally. But will he ever go away? Hell no. At least I hope he doesn't ever go away. I mean, I love Teemo. I love what he brings to the game. It's a sense of fun. It is a sense of randomness, but not a Hearthstone randomness. And I think for anybody who's played Hearthstone, you understand what I mean when I say Hearthstone randomness, because sometimes Hearthstone randomness actually takes away from the strategy and the competitiveness of the game because it's just so freaking random. So good job, Riot, bringing a cancerous, tilting Teemo to the game. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. My hat's off to you. I think it's awesome that he's in the game and that he's in the game in the way that you guys put him in there. So, and that's it. That's the 5 most talked about cards, at least from my perspective. If you guys agree, if you guys disagree, put your comments below. As always, I will be counting down the days until this game comes out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative. I hope that you guys are as excited as I am for this game to release. Until the next video, stay positive. Peace out.